It's the countdown to Christmas, and Jingles and myself are here with you. We know this. The diaspora knows this. The world knows this. Reggae is iconic, and the United Nations is on board. They've dubbed the genre a global treasure. And here to tell us what this will mean for us at the music and how to tap in the recognition, head of the Institute of the Caribbean and Reggae Studies Unit at UWI, Sonia Stanley. Good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome back.
Thank
You
you.
pretty much live here
Always
now.
good to be here.
My co-host.
I know, right? Maybe she should switch seats.
Question, we have to apply for stuff like this? Is apply the word?
Yes, if you understand how the international relations and governance thing works, there are very streamlined processes. We do have to apply in the same way that when Kingston was designated a creative city for music, we had to apply. So there's an elaborate application process and over 3 years of intensive work to put together what was the dossier or the application materials in order to access the nomination.
So is it a situation where someone else, other than someone who is a citizen of the country, can nominate for the country?
No.
We have to
Usually,
do it.
in the same way, let's use Kingston as a creative city, the nomination comes through, or the application goes through the municipality. In this particular instance with UNESCO's List of Intangible Heritage for Humanity, it was a project of the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport at the nth hour, in the sense that the process was driven by the Ministry of Culture, but it was supported by a larger team, including the African Caribbean Institute of Jamaica, the ACIJ, the Jamaica National Commission of UNESCO right here, and organizations, the University of the West Indies, a larger team of persons putting together that application.
Apart from the fact that no one could now say, I don't think they could say it before, but apart from the fact that no one could not now say that it does not belong to Jamaica, what other benefits do we derive from something like this?
Now, if you know anything about the conventions at all, the UNESCO conventions that have anything to do with culture, there are 5 major ones. And the one that we are principally, involved in at the moment, which is the Convention for the cultural diversity. This has to do with promoting dialogue. It has to do with recognition for the communities of people who have been creators and perpetuators of forms of intangible heritage such as reggae. And I think most of the viewers would understand that when we talk about intangible heritage, we're talking about the culture you can't touch, you can't see it. It is wispy. You can feel it, but you might hear it, but you can't see it. It's not touchable. So music falls very much in that category. There are other things that were inscribed in the same session that reggae received the inscription. And of course, we're talking about over 300 different inscriptions on that list. There are things like the kind of intellectual and community knowledge involved in things like, horse whispering and, trust me, a myriad of things. And really and truly, this all came out of a history of people stealing other people's products and, copywriting
So
it
you have to
and
market.
getting all of the benefits from it. So the petitions went to the United Nations, and they absolutely made a process involved in trying to preserve and safeguard. Now, there are 2 different lists. One is specifically related to the safeguarding, those in need of safeguarding, so things that are on the verge of, let's call it extinction. And then there's the other one, which is just the general list of intangible cultural heritage for humanity. That's the one that we are on. It's not that reggae is in any danger of extinction.
Oh, most definitely not.
And certainly not that reggae is in any danger of being named something unassociated with Jamaica. However, what is now available to us through this inscription is the recognition, the visibility, the international mobility the emphasis that we at home have to make in terms of putting music first. Jamaica's music is its largest export.
Speaking of which, we know what we have, right? Everybody says that, oh, Jamaicans don't know what we have, we don't export it, and we don't use our talent and put it on the international stage. But yes, we are aware of what we have. How do we use what we have for the betterment of the country?
Now, let me begin by saying this is a multi-stakeholder operation. It's not something that government has to do this, or the private sector has to do this, or the people who are promoters have to do this. It's everybody. And there are a number of things I want to talk about this morning. So let's talk about rights management. In Jamaica right now, we are paying more money for the playing of foreign music in Jamaica when we have such a deep, broad catalog of music that many children nowadays, they don't even know that Jamaican music spreads so far and so deep. We need to play Jamaican music in Jamaica so that the money that we are receiving in terms of royalties, we don't pay all of that money out to the record companies and the artists that are outside of Jamaica. That's one thing, and that might require us to have a serious conversation about quotas for radio play. The other thing I've been concerned about, many years talking to industry insiders on behalf of all those who were part of the process.
Yeah, man. She's the head of the Institute of Caribbean and Reggae Studies. I didn't know Reggae Studies was a part of that.
Oh, absolutely. The Reggae Studies Unit has been in existence for some time.
I didn't know that.
Pioneered by Caroline Cooper.
Yep,
Yes.
at the University of the West Indies, Dr. Sonia Stanley Nair. Soon come.